Hi guys, Diane here and welcome back to the Citrus Twist YouTube channel. Today I am going to create a layout using the October add-on kit. This add-on kit is so gorgeous. It's just absolutely chock to the brim with the crepe paper marigold collection. And one of the things that I wanted to do with this layout is really take advantage of those 3 cut apart sheets that are in the add-on kit. So I'm going to start by grabbing those. I have already used a little bit of this kit before, hence why I've already chopped into this cut apart sheet. But I'm just going to go ahead and use my trimmer and my scissors to cut apart all 3 of those pages. I am also keeping the branding strips. So once all of those are cut down, I'm going to go ahead and just trim off the little pattern paper pieces. These branding strips have 2 bits of pattern, so 1 on each side. So I'm just trimming those down and I'll be able to use those as little scraps for my layers. So my plan for this layout is to create 3 clusters using the 3 photos that I have picked out for this layout. Hence why I have been busy chopping apart all of these cut apart pieces. And you can see there are an absolute ton. Now the kit also includes the actual die cut pack, but you can see just how many pieces that I'm going to be able to use for layering just by trimming apart those 3 papers. Now I've made a few rough piles on my desktop here, just kind of grouping these cut apart pieces by size basically, because I want to be able to start layering. And a couple of these pieces are a little bit too big, I think, because I've got 3 photos and I'm going to build clusters with them. There are a couple of pieces from the cut apart sheet you can see on the desk there that they're a little bit big. So instead I'm going to grab some of the pattern paper scraps. So these are pieces that I've already used from the kit, and I just picked up one of the beautiful vintage book papers that are also included in the kit. So if I fold that over and add that in behind, it already gives me a couple of layers. So you can see how quickly and easy it is to build these kind of little photo clusters, and that's exactly what I'm going to do for all 3 of these photos. So I'm adding little pieces. I've added a label, and this one here I've added one of the cut apart tags, so I haven't actually punched the hole in the tag yet. And I'm just creating kind of a base cluster. I'm going to add little bits and pieces to these, but I want to just create the 3 kind of bases first. Now you can see here I am going to crack into this die cut pack just to see if there's anything else that I want to add, and I'm just pulling out a few pieces here. I'm going to end up with a predominantly kind of pink, cream and blue color scheme, but I do want to add a few other little colors to it just to break that apart and not make it quite so themey. But obviously my photos are very blue. This is of a family trip that my sister took with her partner and son Jack, and I really wanted to highlight that blue by using as much blue as I can in this layout. So I've got 2 kind of clusters basically layered together. I'm working on my 3rd one here. I do want to add some kind of wood grain, some neutral tones in here as well, like I said, just to tone down that theme a little bit. And I'm definitely not afraid to cut pieces in half so you can use them more than once. It also helps to add a little bit of cohesion throughout the layout because you've got that same element repeated elsewhere. Now there was that die cut camera in that embellishment pack, and that really is the only kind of not a layer, do you know what I mean? Like it's the only kind of element on here, and I'm going to use that as a base for creating a focal point on one of my photos. So now I've got these all pretty much how I want them. I'm going to go ahead and start adhering them all together. I'm just starting from the top layer down and working my way towards my desktop here. Sometimes I'm adding a little bit too much adhesive, but I do want to make sure that these all stay really well stuck down together. When I finished adhering this first one all together, I wanted a little bit more texture. I don't want to create too much dimension with this layout because I want to fit as many layouts in my album as I can. So I'm pulling back on the dimension a little bit, but I do want to add some texture. So I just used a Tim Holtz distress tool just to rough up some of those edges. And obviously that first cluster there I had already adhered together, so that did kind of dictate which parts I could distress the edges of. And these other two clusters, it's not going to be so much of an issue because I'm going to do it as I'm going. Now I haven't taken any sort of reference photos or anything for these clusters, so as I'm pulling them apart to distress them like that, it does mean that I kind of lose track of where things are going, and I do have to just do my best to put it all back together the way I wanted. Now the little camera, I did pop up on a little bit of foam. That's just some craft foam, so it's not especially thick. It's not going to add too much dimension, and one layer of foam is the absolute maximum thickness that this layout is going to have. I did use a little bit of that pattern paper. It's like a black typewriter one behind that photo, just to matte it, to help it stand off. The background paper is that blue and pink floral, which is gorgeous. It's definitely my favorite in the whole collection, but it was very similar tones to the actual photo. So I used that black matte just to help it stand out a little bit more. Now I did grab my hole punch there so I could actually punch the holes in the tags. It just helps those pieces to feel a little bit more real, if I use quote marks to do that. When I come from a cut apart piece, if you do just punch a hole in the tag, it makes it more like a tag rather than a cut apart. Now I've got my 3 clusters, that's the sort of base for them, and now I need to find something to put them onto. So I'm just going to go through the pattern papers. I did try white, but I wanted to challenge myself to use something other than a white background. It's a really easy choice to chuck it on a piece of white cardstock. Sometimes it's a little bit too easy, and I wanted to just add a little bit more color, a little bit more fun, and use up some of this beautiful pattern paper. So I don't often put a pattern paper on a background, and I really wanted to with these clusters. Now I loved this pink polka dot, and I still do. Even when I watch this video back now, I still do really love it. I'm sort of working out as I go where I'm going to put these clusters, how I'm going to sit them on the page. This is one of the, I guess, disadvantages with creating the clusters first. They did end up slightly larger than I probably would have wanted them to be. So I am going to need to make them work, and that includes adding extra layers, shuffling things around, trimming things down, just to help them fit together in that kind of visual triangle. Now before I committed to that pink polka dot, say that 6 times fast, background, I wanted to just make sure there weren't any more sort of appropriate ones in them, and I do really end up using this. It's kind of a ledger paper, and I love it. It's a little bit lighter, so it's a little bit more in my comfort zone. It's still not white, it is still patterned, but it has those kind of taped pieces already on it, and I felt like that kind of added to the sort of layered look that I've already got going. So I'm going to use this one here. Here we go. I'm just going to trim a little bit more off just so that I can nestle these 3 pieces together. That sort of corner where they all meet in the middle worked nicer if I could just trim that top piece down a little bit. Now there are some vintage findings in this kit as well, and I loved this sort of, it's almost a denim ribbon, so I'm going to add a little bit of that into a couple of places too. It's the same color as that tag that I've got in my top cluster, and so it does help to bring in that sort of denim-y darker blue to the rest of these clusters, which were all a little bit lighter. So I love that. Again, it's adding texture without too much dimension, and tying all of those colors together. Now the same thing goes with this other vintage trim. I've already used a little bit of this, so I only had this little piece left, which was perfect because it means I can just tuck it under one of these layers and it peeks out and just gives a little bit more dimension. Now one of the pieces that I pulled out from the die cut pack is this vellum word that says together, and I want to use that to create my title on the layout, so I'm just sitting that on my layout where I think I want the title to go. Really at this stage I'm just kind of trialing where everything's going to fit together. Like I said, the clusters are all pretty large, so I want to make sure I've got enough room for everything. I'm going to adhere that vintage trim with just a little bit of liquid adhesive, and everything else I'm just going to carry on using my tape runner. I'm adding the trim to the page first, and then I'm going to use a little bit of adhesive to adhere my cluster down. I don't need to add too much at this point, because what I'm going to do is take this whole layout over to my sewing machine and just stitch a few parts of each of these clusters onto the layout. It serves two purposes. Again, it's going to add a little bit more texture, but it's also making sure that everything is fully adhered down and it's going to be stuck for good. So that's it. I've added a few little pieces of stitching there, and I've trimmed off all the extra threads. It's very hard to see on the video. You'll be able to see it a little bit more in the detail shots at the end of the video. But when I was doing that, I kind of wanted to balance the layout out a little bit more. It seemed very left-hand heavy, but it didn't look purposeful. So I want to make it look a little bit more purposeful, and I've done that by just trimming off a little bit of the edge of the background paper, and I'm going to back that with one of these blue floral patterns. I tried a couple of different blues. This darker one worked nicer. It just adds a little bit more of a heavy edge to the left-hand side. I adhered it behind the original pattern paper just in one sort of strip, and that means I could just make sure that it was 12 inches and then trim down the rest so I don't have to waste that entire sheet. I pulled out this vellum wreath when I was looking through the die cut pack, and it accidentally ripped, so it was a good excuse to be able to cut that in half and add it in two different places. I like that because it balances out that dark black title piece that I've pulled out. There's not a lot of black in the rest of the layout, and so that works really nicely. Now here's a little trick for using up those branding strips. I'm just folding them in half and adhering them down so there's like a little folded loop. I'm not folding them flat, I'm just leaving them kind of loopy, and again it gives a little bit of dimension. I'm tucking them in underneath the layers, so some of them I'm trimming down, some of them I've just been able to slip under the layers before I go ahead and adhere them down. Now these pieces that I'm adding to the left side of my layout, to my clusters, I want to make sure that they overlap that strip of blue pattern paper just to help tie everything all in together. I added a couple of this stamps, the postage stamps from the cut apart sheets, and one of those I did add with some foam, again to give some matching dimension, to lift it off some of those layers, but also help to tie in that camera piece as well. And I'm just going to carry on building these layers. I'm trying not to add too many extra colors. I have added a couple more neutral pieces, again, just to stop it being too themey. And now I'm going to start adding a few more littler embellishments. So I've got some puffy stickers, and I've got these gold thickers from the collection. These are really beautiful. I hadn't intended to add any gold, but when I saw these leaves, I just knew I had to add them in. So I'm going to add those in a couple of places. To create my title, I'm just adding a little bit of tape runner underneath the vellum where it's going to be hidden by those layers. So there's a tiny little piece on the left-hand side and a bit that goes at the top. Now I'm adding another little gold leaf at the top, and of course I have to have 3, so I'm going to add a smaller leaf down here at the bottom, and I'm doing the same thing. I'm tucking those underneath all the layers that I've already added. A few puffy stickers because I have to, can't help myself. They are so cute, and they're the perfect colors for this as well. And the last step for this layout is to just finish off my title. I'm going to use these exclusive alphas. They're a beautiful minty green color. I'm just adding the word adventure, so my title reads Adventure Together. And all I've got left to do is add in a date stamp and my journaling off camera. And that's it. That's this layout all done. This is a gorgeous, gorgeous kit, so make sure you head over to the Citrus Twist shop and grab one for yourself. If you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe to the Citrus Twist channel. Thank you so much for watching, and we'll see you again really soon.